You're watching E.T.N. Share and subscribe.
Hey guys, welcome to Entertainment Talk Nation. This is Rob. This video, we're going to discuss what the hell is going on in Hollywood. So it has been a horrific year so far for movies. It really has. I mean, if you're not called Disney or Marvel, then you've had a dreadful year. And it's funny because there's a lot of things that play into this, a lot. And we're going to go over some of them, not all of them, because it really takes many different pieces of the puzzle to add up as to why there's such horrible performances at the box office. Now, the first thing is expenses, right? Expenses and options. Let's put those together. What I mean by that is movies are expensive, okay? I mean, I remember when I took my kids to see the Bumblebee movie. It was me, my son, and my daughter. We went to the theater. I got the tickets. I got the concession stand. And before you know it, it was $100 easily. Now, this is from a person who actually goes to a store like CVS or whatever and buys that cheap 89-cent candy. The same kind of candy they sell at the theater for like $6. Yeah. Well, you know, my kids still like popcorn. And obviously, I want to get them a drink. And they sit down, and I get a big bucket so we can all share. My daughter loves popcorn. My son loves popcorn. But that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money to spend in the theater, you know? And it doesn't matter how many little tricks you have. You know, yes, you can bring your own candy and stuff like that. But you eventually buy something at the concession stand. And it is so expensive. It's unreal. Now, the other thing is options, right? A lot of people have streaming services, whether you have Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, whatever the case may be. And there's so many different TV shows on. There's so many different things to watch and stream and binge watch that it makes it easier to not go to the theater. I'm even guilty of this. I was the kind of guy that a couple of years ago, I'd go to the movie every week. There was something I wanted to watch. But now, because movies are not as good or they're just not as inviting as they once were. You know, I love the Disney movies. I have not gone to see Aladdin. I have not gone to see Lion King, and I don't intend on seeing either one of them. I definitely intend on seeing them when they come out on Blu-ray and digital and stuff like that. But I know that it's expensive. You know, if I were to take the whole family, that's like $120, $130 for all of us. That's insane. So I do think that expenses and options at home play a big role as to why people are just not going to the movies as much, unless it's a Marvel movie or a Disney movie. The other thing too is reboot hell, and that kind of wants me. That kind of where I want to segue into this article I found on website Den of Geek, and this was insane when I found this. Because I was interested at what was going on in the theater. You know, I mean, X-Men bombed. You know what I mean? A lot of other movies we thought would do pretty well bombed. Brightburn bombed. You know, Godzilla, you know, did not do well, did not make a profit at all. They didn't even crack 400 million, which was not good. We've spoken about that tons of times here, right? So, you know, there's also a bunch of reboots, and that is the problem here. It's just, there's nothing being developed in Hollywood that is enticing people to continue to visit the theater. And I found this article on Den of Geek where there are 121 movie remakes and reboots currently in the works, which is insane. Now, some of these movies have already been released. Some of these movies we know are being worked on, and some of them have already come and gone. So it's not 121 fresh movies, but still, that's a lot. You know, we got titles like An American Werewolf in London, which has been done to hell. Alien Nation, for those of you who remember that movie. Attack on Titan is another one listed here. Of course, we know Batman. There's another Batman movie coming out. Big Trouble in Little China, one of my favorite 80s movies with Kurt Russell. You know, The Birds. We already know about Blade, right? We heard about that at Comic-Con. The Blob, Bloodsport. Can you imagine a Bloodsport movie without Jean-Claude Van Damme? I mean, honestly. Blue Thunder, Candyman, Car Wash, Charlie's Angels, which we know is already coming out. Child's Play, which has already been released. The Chronicles of Narnia again. Really? You know, Clue. Clueless. Who cares about Clueless? The Craft. You know, I mean, it just goes on and on. Another Crow movie. We all know about that. Cube. I mean, it goes on and on and on. Dumbo, which already came out. Dune, which we know is in development. Another Dungeons and Dragons movie. The Entity, Escape from New York, Every Which Way But Loose, Fantastic Voyage, Firestarter. Firestarter, why would we need to remake that? That's a great movie as it is. Flash Gordon, Flight of the Navigator, another fantastic movie that doesn't need to be remade. The Fly, I mean, it just goes on and on. And then it's also sequel heavy. You know, there was just announced that there's another possible Indiana Jones movie coming out, Indiana Jones 5. So, you know, I understand it's hard to come up with new content. I get that. I understand. Like when you know, obviously I'm a nobody in this department in terms of creating, you know, being creative. But even when I wrote my story, I had a hard time making sure it was original. You know, there's enough originality in there. I know that much, but there's definitely some areas that are very similar to other fantasy tales. And I get that I understand that it's hard to be original these days with the way so many different forms of content and entertainment have been developed. But you can still be original enough that something feels fresh. And even if you tell a story that's been told before, not necessarily a reboot, but you're telling a story that's similar, it's just maybe different characters or a different setting or different theme, you can still do it successfully if the story's written well and the characters are developed. But reboots are really destroying Hollywood right now. You know, you look at Men in Black, International, bombed. You know, you look at all the other reboots that we've had over the last couple of years that have bombed. You know, the Ghostbusters reboot. You know, just so many. You know, Child's Play bombed this year. It's just insane the amount of reboots that are coming out, and to think that they're still planning so many more. And you would think after a while, you would understand that people are just not. They just don't care about reboots anymore. You know, and even if the reboot's good, I think at this point people are willing to wait for it to come to the theater. So I think reboots definitely play a big role as to why people are turned off about going to the movies anymore. And then on top of that, the other problem is that there's a lot of swapping going on in these movies. So whether you're swapping genders or races, and you know, some people have a hard time with that, especially if they're very fond of the original. Or some people just don't have an interest in watching the new character. You know, take a movie like Ocean's. I think it was Ocean's 8, the one with the ladies in it. Great actresses, fantastic actresses. Movie did not do well because people mostly don't want to see that. You know, first of all, it's a reboot. Second of all, you swapped all the genders, and people, that's like two negatives right there. That just people are like, yeah, forget it, whatever. You know, also some movies are being a little bit too political for people's taste. And let's face it, that's the reason we go see movies. That's the reason we do, you know, the entertainment related stuff that we do, whether we play games, go to a movie or whatever, to escape the real world for just a little while, our everyday grind, you know, the same thing over and over. You get up, you go to work, you eat, you breakfast, lunch, dinner, blah, 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 go to sleep. You know, when people go to a movie or they sit down to play a game for a couple of hours, they're doing that to escape that very thing, you know, to escape the news for a while, to escape the politics, to escape the grind. So when you start injecting politics and virtual signaling into your movies, which a lot of these movies are doing, and we've all spoken about it, we all don't like it, then it just becomes more of a turnoff. Then you can start to think to yourself, well, why am I going to go to the movies? There's no guarantee I'm going to like it. There's no guarantee that it's going to be, you know, that it's not going to be a message movie as opposed to a movie that's just entertaining. You know, every movie has to have some sort of message now. And that's easy for anyone to stay home. You know, when you consider how expensive the movies are to go to, what even makes it worse is if you spend money on a movie that's not good, or a movie that's kind of shoving down your throat a certain message, whether the message be political or anything else. You know, we go to get entertained, and you put all this together, and that's pretty much why we're getting a shitty performance at the box office. People run to see Marvel movies and Disney movies because they know what they're going to get at this point. They know that they're going to get an entertaining movie, you know, out of a Marvel movie or a Disney movie. And even Marvel is flirting with a lot of the tropes that people don't like to go to movies for. You know, they did it in Captain Marvel, And while that movie was very successful, you know, you can only get away with that so many times when you're Marvel before people start getting tired of that too. We've seen it happen to Star Wars. Star Wars started off very strong, and obviously, while you know the Last Jedi did very well, you know, following up to that, you know, a Solo story did not do a Star Wars story. Han Solo did not do well because people are tired of the messages being shoved down their throat. You know, Last Jedi had the message of, you know, freeing droids, and then there was the whole love triangle and free the robots in Solo. After a while, people, you know, when you bite them once or twice, after a while, they're not going to show up anymore. You know, and I have a strong feeling, depending on how they position the second Captain Marvel movie, I have a strong feeling it's not going to do as well. You know, I think a lot of its success is to the fact that, well, for one, people don't really pay attention to the internet as much as we think. So they didn't know the whole thing going on with what Brie Larson said and what Rotten Tomatoes pulled. Because while, you know, I was there when it happened, I saw it happen right in front of my eyes. As many critics praised Captain Marvel, there was a lot of viewers, non-trolls. We can sit here and argue about trolls. I will say this. There were trolls on both sides of the spectrum there. There were trolls going there saying that the movie was great, and there were trolls saying that the movie was shit. But not all of them were trolls. A lot of people who loved the movie were not trolls. And a lot of people who hated the movie were not trolls either. The problem is the people who didn't like the movie far outnumbered those who did. So, you know, but the general audience is not on the internet looking at these things. They're there to, you know, their thing is they do their grind Monday through Friday, and then the weekends they say, oh, let's go see Captain Marvel. But I'm pretty sure, you know, once you deliver a movie like a Star Wars or Captain Marvel, which starts throwing in these forced messages that people don't like, you're going to start seeing your numbers drop. And right now, it's interesting where Marvel's headed. It's going to be interesting to see how things play out for them going forward. If they deliver a movie like Thor: Love and Thunder, and you know Natalie Portman's character Jane does not play Thor for a long period of time, like if they try to make a trilogy out of her, I think it's going to fail. But if she's in this movie with Thor and she just happens to have Mjolnir and he has a Stormbreaker and they just happen to team up, I think it's going to do fine. But if it's really, really about Jane, I think it'll do good too, but I just don't think it'll have a lot of legs following it up. And if they do a trilogy about her, then that's going to be even worse. You know, so, and it's not that there's a problem with women playing leading roles. Natalie Portman's a fantastic actress, and I would see her in any movie. But you're taking a character that is guaranteed, set in stone, a man, and possibly converting it into a woman. We don't know yet. We got to see how it plays out. I personally don't think they're going to make that movie very much like the comic. I don't think that's the approach they're going to take. But they're using her as being a Thor, being the character, whether it's for half hour in the movie or for her own trilogy. Right now they're focusing on that, especially the media, and it's propping it up. And for all we know, it could just be a movie with Chris Hemsworth as Thor, and she just comes out and she happens to have the powers for a little while, kind of like Captain America, which of course would cause an uproar. So, but all these things play a role. They do. And even if even if you don't necessarily agree with what I'm saying in terms of the virtual signaling and the political tropes, they may not exist to you because they don't bother you. You know what I mean? But I can tell you're probably in the minority, and I'm not saying you should be bothered by that. If you're not, great. If you're blind to it, fantastic. But there are people who are more active in that area, and they kind of see that, and they're like, I don't want to see this. And there's a great majority of people who don't want to see that, and that's why I think movies are suffering right now. This whole combination, all of it, not just the political tropes in the movies, but also the reboots, the constant reboots, the endless sequels, you know, trying to make a quick buck off of old content, and people are being hip to it now. They're not gonna bother. You know, people see a reboot and automatically they're like, forget it, I'm not interested. So we'll see what happens going forward. It'll be interesting to see how the next couple of years play out. If there's going to be a comeback for the movie industry next year, I would say this year is probably shot. You know what I mean? Even though there's still time left, there's not like the winter and the fall are heavy movie years. Heavy movie moments of the year. Usually around October, you get a lot of crappy horror movies that just don't do well. You usually have a dime in there. I mean, usually have a diamond or a gem in there, one or two. And then you have one big movie that usually comes around the Christmas time. And then after that, it's very little. So I think it's pretty much over this year for the movie industry. I think they've gotten heavy losses, with the exception, of course, of Disney and Marvel, which is owned by Disney. But we'll see. We'll see what next year has to bring. I just think 121 reboots in the making. Of course, obviously a lot less because some of them came out already. That's where Hollywood's going. They, regardless of the numbers that they're not hitting, for whatever reason, they're sticking with it. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Why do you think that after all these reboots have done so badly, why do you think they continue to push it? I mean, originally, obviously, it was to make a quick buck, but they're not making any money now, so I don't see why they continue. Has Hollywood really run out of ideas? Interesting. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Until next video, this is Rob signing off for E.T.N, where we don't do news, we just talk entertainment. Take it easy.
Thank you for watching E.T.N. Click here to watch more content. Don't forget to leave a comment. Also, make sure you like and share this video. If you want to know when the next video is up, click the notification bell next to the subscribe button. And most of all, make sure to click that subscribe button for regular content.